So I've been wanting to do a follow-up to my last video, which is about the stay-at-home protests in Michigan. Of course, right now, the United States is in the midst of a much bigger set of protests, likely ones for the history books. On May 25th, 2020, African-American man George Floyd died at the hands of a white police officer in Minneapolis. The protests have spread to almost every city in the country, and the protests, some of them have turned quite violent. I've been kind of reflecting on all of this as an American a long way at home, especially because in Poland here, one of the courses I teach is U.S. history and culture. And this weekend, my students are likely going to be putting the final touches on their final projects, which are a road trip itinerary in the U.S. Usually sort of a fun way to cap off the semester. The students have to plan their accommodations, their food, where they will travel, what states they will go to, and tell them what sort of cultural events they'll see, what kind of national parks they'll visit. It's sort of a much lighter thing as compared to the essay they have to write, which analyzes the American dream. But this weekend, I really shudder to think what my students are finding when they look up information about the United States. And I feel really bad for them because a lot of them have idealized the U.S. They've seen the shiny version that Hollywood gives them. And as students in Poland, is a slightly poorer country in Europe, the U.S. was sort of this shining beacon that they could look up to. And now it's literally on fire. And part of me hopes that it keeps burning and that a better phoenix will rise out of the ashes. As for what I'm doing, since I obviously can't take part in any of the protests, I've decided to organize sort of a small memorial thing. One tomorrow, 31st of May, at the U.S. Consulate in Krakow, and one on June 1st in Platsolny in Wrocław. Nothing big, especially given social distancing, but I do want to buy some flowers, light some candles, I have a picture of Floyd, just something that I can do, a small effort I can do so far from home. It's also, I think, a really important moment for the U.S. I think we need to take a long, hard look at our legacy of racism, especially systemic as well as institutionalized racism, and look at our idiot clown of a president and how he's contributed to this. From his comments about the white supremacist protesters in South Carolina being very fine people, to his tweet encouraging looters to be shot. I think Trump has a big hand in encouraging, fomenting all the violence that's happening. But this is not just about Trump or Republicans. I'm not letting centrist Democrats off the hook either. After reading up on Amy Klobuchar's record about letting police officers off the hook when she was a prosecutor, I think that a lot of Democrats have to take a long look at their own voting records as well. But despite what's happening in the U.S., I really do want to follow up on my last video. One of the things I want people to remember is that the United States is not the only country that has been having stay-at-home protests. One of the first protests in Poland was on 25th of April. This is a protest in Jigolec, a town on the Polish-German border. However, the protest on the border town was not just about economic reasons, but it's also about travel. The town, which occupies both Poland and Germany, has been literally cut down the middle by the border closures. In May, the demonstrations in the capital began, and these ones were fueled by economic reasons. The first protest was argued by Strajk Przedsiębiorców, which roughly translates to business owners in English. These protests stems from business owners in Poland wanting help and support from the government due to their issues they're having with the COVID crisis. On the 16th of May, things got violent. Tear gas was used on the protesters, and Jacek Bury, a senator and member of the opposition party to the conservative ruling party, was detained by police. These protests have gone on for 3 weekends. The most recent one was on the 24th of May. In my opinion, the violence from these protests, and the need for these protests at all, could have been avoided if Poland's conservative ruling party, Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, PiS for short, if this ruling party was willing to financially help out business owners in Poland. They've been it's not that Poland doesn't have any money to spend. They've already spent plenty of money at 500 plus, which gives families 500 extra zloty a month for every child they have. Poland also recently wasted a lot of money rescheduling their presidential election from May until July, but honestly, I could spend a whole other video on that. My point is that a lot of people in Poland are hurting because of the COVID crisis, especially people who own their own businesses. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm still working, but I know that Poland needs to be supporting people who are out of work or people who are struggling due to the COVID crisis. I know these two sets of protests don't have a lot in common. In the US, it's about police brutality spurred by the death of Floyd, and in Poland, the protests have been fueled by economic reasons. However, I do think there is a common theme. I think that police and government too often overlook the disenfranchised, the ones who maybe don't have as much power or clout as others. Why? Because it's easy. It's a lot easier to ignore people or sweep problems under the rug than make real, lasting change.